Hello, my students. Let me start with a truth that feels uncomfortable in a fast world. Real progress is slow, not because you're doing something wrong, not because you lack talent or motivation, but because anything that truly changes you needs time to settle. We live in a culture that celebrates speed, quick results, fast success, instant improvement. And because of this, many people quit, not because they can't grow, but because growth doesn't happen fast enough to impress them. In this episode, I want to talk about patience, not as waiting, not as weakness, but as a powerful skill that quietly creates real progress when nothing else works. So stay with me until the very end, because once you understand patience differently, you'll stop fighting your journey and start trusting it. Part 1. Most people misunderstand patience completely. They think patience means doing nothing, waiting passively, or accepting less. But real patience is active, it's disciplined, it's intentional, and it's one of the strongest forces behind long-term success. Patience is the ability to continue when results are invisible. This is where most people fail. They start with energy, they feel motivated, they imagine the future version of themselves, and for a few days or weeks, everything feels exciting. Then progress slows down, the excitement fades, results don't match expectations, and doubt appears quietly. Is this working? Am I wasting time? Why am I not improving faster? These questions don't mean you're failing. They mean you've reached the point where patience is required. Real progress begins exactly where motivation ends. In language learning, personal growth, health, confidence, or any meaningful skill, progress happens below the surface first. Your brain is adjusting. Your habits are reorganizing. Your identity is shifting. But because you can't see these changes clearly, you assume nothing is happening. This assumption is dangerous because most breakthroughs are delayed rewards. Think about learning English. For a long time, it feels like nothing is changing. You listen, you repeat, you practice, and still speaking feels uncomfortable. Understanding feels incomplete. Then one day, without warning, you understand a conversation more easily. Words come out naturally. Confidence rises slightly. That moment feels sudden, but it's not. It's the result of weeks or months of invisible progress. Patience keeps you present during the invisible phase. Impatience pulls you out too early. Another reason patience creates real progress is that it protects you from constant restarting. Impatient people change methods too often. They jump from one strategy to another, always searching for something faster. But every time you restart, you reset momentum. Progress needs continuity. Consistency with an imperfect method beats inconsistency with a perfect one. Patience allows methods to work fully. It gives your brain time to adapt. It allows habits to stabilize. Without patience, even the best system fails. Patience also changes how you experience difficulty. Without patience, difficulty feels like a sign to stop. With patience, difficulty feels like a normal part of the process. This shift is powerful. It removes emotional drama from effort. You stop asking, "Why is this hard?" and start saying, "Of course this is hard. I'm growing." This mindset keeps you moving. Another hidden power of patience is that it reduces pressure. When you stop expecting immediate results, your body relaxes, and relaxed bodies learn faster. This is especially true in speaking, creativity, and performance. Pressure tightens you, patience loosens you, and looseness improves learning. Patience also protects self-trust. Every time you quit too early, your brain records a small failure, not because the goal was wrong, but because the process was abandoned. Over time, this creates a pattern of distrust toward yourself. Patience breaks that pattern. When you stay, even when it's boring or slow, you send a different message to your brain. I finish what I start. This message changes identity, and identity shapes behavior more than motivation ever could. People who make real progress are not more talented. They are more patient with their own development. They don't panic when progress is quiet. They don't rush when results are small. They understand that growth compounds. Compounding is slow at the beginning, almost invisible, but once it reaches a certain point, progress accelerates naturally. The problem is that most people quit just before this acceleration happens. Patience keeps you long enough to reach it. Another important truth is that patience helps you learn from feedback instead of reacting emotionally. When you're impatient, feedback feels like criticism. When you're patient, feedback feels like information. This difference changes how you improve. Patient learners adjust instead of quitting. Impatient learners quit instead of adjusting. Patience also creates emotional stability. You stop riding emotional highs and lows. You become steady, and steadiness is what builds sustainable progress. Fast progress is exciting. Slow progress is reliable, and reliability wins long term. At this stage, it's important to understand that patience is not passive waiting. It's active staying, showing up again, doing the small thing one more time, trusting that repetition is not wasted. Patience does not mean lowering standards. It means extending timelines, and extending timelines removes desperation. When you remove desperation, learning becomes enjoyable again. You stop forcing results. You let results come to you. In the next part, we'll explore how impatience quietly destroys progress, how modern habits train us to quit too early, and how you can rebuild patience even if you feel restless or frustrated most of the time. Part 2. Impatience rarely looks like impatience. It often disguises itself as intelligence, ambition, or being realistic. It says things like, I need a better method, or this isn't efficient, or I should be further by now. These thoughts sound logical, but underneath them is the same force that quietly destroys progress, the inability to stay when growth feels slow. Modern life trains impatience daily. We scroll, we click, we switch. We expect answers instantly. Entertainment is immediate. Results are visible fast. And when this mindset enters personal growth, it creates a dangerous mismatch. Because real growth does not match the speed of modern rewards. When your brain is used to instant feedback, slow improvement feels like failure. This is why many people quit good habits too early. They start learning, they feel excited, then the novelty fades. The brain stops receiving quick rewards, dopamine drops, and suddenly the habit feels pointless. Not because it is pointless, but because it is no longer stimulating. Patience is the skill that carries you through this emotional gap. Without patience, you confuse boredom with lack of progress. With patience, you understand boredom as a sign that the habit is becoming normal. And normal is where progress lives. Another way impatience destroys progress is by creating emotional overreaction to small setbacks. One missed day feels like disaster. One bad performance feels like proof of failure. One slow week feels like regression. This emotional intensity drains energy and creates unnecessary stress. Patient people respond differently. They zoom out. They understand that progress is not a straight line. It moves forward, pauses, dips slightly, and continues. They don't panic at normal fluctuation. Patience replaces drama with perspective. This perspective is especially important when learning English, building confidence, or changing identity. These changes are subtle at first. You don't wake up fluent. You don't suddenly feel confident. You become slightly more comfortable, slightly less afraid, slightly clearer. Impatient minds ignore slight. Patient minds value it, and valuing small changes keeps motivation alive. Another hidden cost of impatience is method hopping. When results don't appear fast, people switch strategies. New app, new course, new teacher, new routine. This feels productive, but it fragments effort. The brain never settles into one system long enough to benefit fully. Patience allows depth. Depth creates mastery. Staying with one simple method long enough beats trying many methods briefly, but staying requires patience because results don't announce themselves immediately. Patience also changes how you interpret effort. Without patience, effort feels heavy. With patience, effort feels meaningful. The same action can feel exhausting or satisfying depending on whether you trust the process. Trust grows from patience, and patience grows from understanding how progress really works. Progress is cumulative. Each small action adds a layer. Individually, these layers feel insignificant. Together, they transform you. But the brain is bad at perceiving accumulation. It notices spikes, not slow buildup. This is why patient people often surprise others. They don't look like they're improving day to day. Then suddenly, the change is obvious. Outsiders call it talent or luck. It's neither, it's patience. Another important aspect is identity protection. When you are impatient, your identity is fragile. You constantly need proof that you are improving. Without proof, doubt attacks. Patient people don't require constant validation. They trust the trajectory. They don't ask every day, "Am I good yet?" They ask, "Am I still showing up?" Showing up is enough. Patience also reduces comparison. When you're patient with your own timeline, other people's speed stops bothering you. You understand that different starting points create different journeys. You stop measuring your chapter 1 against someone else's chapter 10. This creates mental peace. Mental peace creates focus. Focus accelerates progress naturally. Ironically, patience often leads to faster results in the long run. Because impatient people burn out, quit, or restart. Patient people continue, and continuity beats intensity every time. The hardest part is that patience feels unrewarded at first. Nobody applauds consistency. Nobody celebrates quiet effort. But the reward arrives later, in confidence, competence, and calm. And when it arrives, it lasts. In the next part, we'll explore how to train patience practically, how to build it even if you feel restless, distracted, or frustrated, and how to design your habits so patience becomes automatic instead of forced. Part 3. Patience is not something you either have or don't have. It's something you train quietly through the way you design your days and interpret your experience. Many people believe they are naturally impatient, but impatience is rarely personality. It's habit, and habits can be reshaped. The first step in training patience is changing how you measure progress. Most people measure progress emotionally. They ask themselves how motivated they feel, how confident they feel, or how exciting the journey feels right now. This is unreliable. Emotions fluctuate daily. When you tie progress to emotion, patience becomes impossible because the emotional signal is inconsistent. Patient people measure behavior, not feelings. They ask simpler questions. Did I show up today? Did I do the small thing I said I would do? Did I continue even when it felt ordinary? These questions ground you in reality instead of mood. And reality is where progress actually happens. Another powerful way to train patience is to lower the daily bar while keeping the long-term direction high. Many people set daily expectations that are too heavy. They expect every session to feel productive, every practice to feel meaningful, every week to show visible improvement. When this doesn't happen, frustration builds, but progress doesn't need intensity every day. It needs continuity. When the daily bar is low, you remove resistance. You make showing up easy. You stop negotiating with yourself. And this is where patience grows naturally because you are no longer fighting your own expectations. Think of patience as staying relaxed while staying consistent. Relaxation is not laziness. It's efficiency over time. Another key skill is learning to delay evaluation. Impatient minds constantly check results. They want feedback now. They want proof now. They want reassurance now. This constant evaluation interrupts flow. Patient minds delay judgment. They say, "I'll check in after 30 days," or "I'll review progress at the end of the month." This creates psychological space. You stop hovering over your own growth. And when you stop hovering, growth accelerates. This is especially important for learning and creativity. When you evaluate too early, you interfere with the process. The brain needs uninterrupted repetition to reorganize itself. Patience protects that space. Another practical way to build patience is to normalize slow days. Some days will feel heavy. Focus will be low. Energy will be limited. Impatient people see these days as problems. Patient people see them as part of the cycle. You don't need to feel strong every day to move forward. You need to move forward even on weak days. When you continue gently on low energy days, you send a powerful signal to your nervous system. Effort is safe. There is no punishment for imperfection. This reduces stress, and reduced stress increases learning speed. Patience also grows when you stop expecting transformation and start appreciating stabilization. Not every phase of growth feels like improvement. Some phases feel like maintaining what you've already built. This is not stagnation, it's consolidation. Consolidation is essential. Without it, progress collapses under its own weight. Another important aspect is how you talk to yourself during waiting periods. The internal voice of impatient people is harsh. It criticizes slow progress. It questions decisions. It creates urgency without direction. This voice drains energy. Patient people use a calmer internal language. They acknowledge effort. They remind themselves of the long view. They speak to themselves like a coach, not a judge. Language shapes patience. When your inner language is supportive, waiting becomes easier. You stop fighting time and start cooperating with it. Another powerful patience training tool is ritual. When an action becomes ritual, it no longer depends on motivation. You don't ask whether you feel like doing it, you just do it. This removes emotional resistance and makes patience automatic. Rituals remove choice fatigue, and when choice fatigue disappears, patience becomes effortless. Even something as small as doing your practice at the same time each day builds patience. The brain loves predictability. Predictability reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety increases tolerance for slow results. Patience also strengthens when you connect effort to identity instead of outcome. Instead of saying, "I'm doing this to get results," say, "I'm doing this because this is who I am." This shift removes urgency. You're no longer chasing, you're expressing. When effort becomes expression, patience feels natural. Another helpful shift is remembering that impatience often comes from fear. Fear that time is running out, fear that you're behind, fear that you'll never get there. Patience does not deny fear, it responds to it with trust. Trust in the process, trust in repetition, trust in yourself. This trust is not blind optimism, it's informed confidence. It comes from understanding how learning, growth, and change actually work. Nothing real changes overnight, nothing meaningful improves instantly, and nothing sustainable is rushed. Once you accept this deeply, patience stops feeling like waiting. It starts feeling like alignment. You stop pushing against time. You start moving with it. In the next part, we'll explore how patience changes identity itself, how it transforms the way you see yourself, how it builds confidence without effort, and how patient people end up achieving more with less stress. Part 4. Over time, patience does something subtle but powerful. It begins to reshape identity. Not in a dramatic way, but quietly through repeated proof. Every time you stay instead of quitting, every time you continue without immediate reward, your brain updates the story it tells about who you are. You stop seeing yourself as someone who starts things. You begin seeing yourself as someone who continues. This shift changes everything. Confidence is often misunderstood as loud belief or strong emotion. In reality, the most stable confidence comes from evidence. Evidence that you can tolerate discomfort. Evidence that you don't panic when results are slow. Evidence that you can trust yourself over time. Patience creates this evidence naturally. When you've stayed through boredom, doubt, and slow progress, fear loses power. You've already faced it and survived. You no longer need constant reassurance. You know that progress doesn't disappear just because it's quiet. This kind of confidence is calm. It doesn't rush. It doesn't compare. It doesn't need to prove anything. Patient people also develop a different relationship with time. Instead of seeing time as pressure, they see it as an ally. Time becomes something that works for them, not against them. Each day of consistent effort adds weight to their progress. They understand that showing up today makes tomorrow easier. This understanding reduces anxiety. Anxiety often comes from trying to control outcomes too early. Patience releases that grip. You focus on the process you can control and let outcomes arrive when they're ready. This mental shift frees energy that was previously wasted on worry. With more mental space, focus improves. With better focus, effort becomes more effective. And effectiveness accelerates progress without force. Patience also changes how you respond to challenges. When something doesn't work, impatient minds interpret it as failure. Patient minds interpret it as information. This difference matters deeply. Information invites adjustment. Failure invites quitting. Patient people ask, "What can I change slightly?" Impatient people ask, "Why isn't this working?" One question moves you forward, the other drains you. Another important transformation patience creates is emotional regulation. You become less reactive. Small setbacks don't trigger strong emotional swings. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't destroy you. You stay balanced because your sense of worth is no longer tied to immediate performance. Balance is powerful. It allows you to keep going when others stop. It allows you to learn when others defend their ego. It allows you to grow when others freeze. This is why patient people often surpass more talented but impatient ones. Talent creates speed at the beginning. Patience creates endurance, and endurance wins long term. Patience also deepens learning. When you're not rushing to finish, you pay more attention to nuance. You notice small improvements. You refine instead of forcing. This depth creates mastery. Mastery is slow by nature. It's built through repetition, reflection, and refinement. Patience is the environment mastery needs to exist. Another quiet benefit of patience is peace. When you stop demanding immediate results from yourself, you reduce internal conflict. You no longer fight your own timeline. This peace doesn't make you passive. It makes you steady. Steady effort is unstoppable. And finally, patience changes your relationship with success itself. Success stops being a destination and becomes a byproduct. You don't chase it desperately. You build conditions for it patiently, and when it arrives, it feels earned, stable, and sustainable. You don't fear losing it because you know how it was built. In the final part, we'll bring everything together: how to live patiently in an impatient world, how to protect patience when pressure returns, and how to carry this mindset forward so real progress continues long after motivation fades. Part 5. Living patiently in an impatient world is not easy. The world constantly pushes urgency, faster results, quicker answers, immediate proof. And because of this pressure, patience can feel unnatural at first. But once you understand its value, patience stops feeling like resistance. It becomes a form of intelligence. Patience is not about slowing your life down. It's about removing unnecessary pressure. When you stop rushing, you think more clearly. You make better decisions. You invest energy where it matters. You stop reacting and start responding. This shift alone creates progress that looks almost effortless from the outside. One of the most important things patience gives you is freedom from emotional urgency. You no longer feel like every day must prove something. You don't panic if today feels unproductive. You trust the accumulation. This trust is what allows real momentum to build. Momentum is fragile when built on excitement. It is stable when built on patience. Another powerful effect of patience is that it helps you finish. Many people start strong and fade quietly. Patient people may start slowly, but they finish consistently. Finishing changes identity. It tells your brain that effort leads somewhere, that staying matters. And once your brain believes that, continuing becomes easier. Patience also protects you from burnout. When you accept that growth takes time, you stop demanding unrealistic performance from yourself. You pace effort. You allow recovery. This keeps you healthy, focused, and capable of long-term work. Burnout is often not caused by effort. It's caused by unrealistic timelines. Patience corrects timelines. As you carry patience forward, you'll notice another change. You become less distracted by what others are doing. Their speed, their success, their opinions lose power over you. You stay in your lane, and staying in your lane is one of the fastest ways to grow. Comparison feeds impatience. Focus feeds patience. In practical life, patience shows up in small decisions. You choose consistency over intensity. You choose learning over proving. You choose progress over perfection. These choices compound quietly. And then one day, you look back. You realize you've changed more than you thought. You realize things that once felt hard now feel normal. You realize you didn't rush, and that's why it worked. This is the reward of patience. Not just results, but resilience. Not just progress, but peace. And here's the most important truth to remember. If you are moving slowly but consistently, you are not behind. If you are staying when it feels boring, you are not failing. If you are building quietly, you are not wasting time. You are doing exactly what real progress requires. So don't rush your growth. Don't pressure your timeline. Don't abandon yourself because change is taking time. Stay, continue, trust. Because patience doesn't just create progress. It creates a version of you that can handle progress when it arrives. And that is what makes it real.